When it comes to golf coaching, I'm very lucky to have had some lessons with the legendary golf coach, that is Pete Cowen. So I'm able to now use my platform to pass on some of the unbelievable information that he's given us, because he is one of the best coaches of all time. In terms, if you look at his credentials, who he's coached, what they've won, he has been an extremely successful golf coach. In particular, what he coaches in the short game is unbelievable, and I'm going to be passing across some of that information in today's video. We're going to be talking about the dragging of the golf club, the release of the golf club, how we want to use the hands during the swing, and also how we use the body better to create more consistency within strike, distance control, and just all round short game shots, because that is the area that is going to save you the most shots. It's statistically proven that it's the area of the game that can lower your handicap and lower your scores. All of the best players in the world, they get coaching, and a lot of them do go to Pete for short game. You've got the likes of Brooks Koepka, Ian Poulter, Lee Westwood. I know those guys right now are not the most popular people on the planet, but some of the best players in the world. Now, this particular shot wouldn't be classed as the most difficult shot in the world. I've got loads of green to work with. I am coming out of the rough. I'm doing this tip from the rough really because it doesn't matter if I do it from rough or fairway. We sometimes actually do a little bit too many tips from the fairway, and a lot of questions I do get asked, oh, is it the same out of the rough or is it the same with X? And it generally is always the same. So I'm going to do this out of the rough because whether I was on the fairway or the rough, this technique is not going to change, or the setup's not going to change, the mentality, the thought process is not going to change. We're going to be really focusing today on how the golf club moves through the impact area. And I do this a lot, by the way, so it's kind of very much something I've learned directly from Pete, is when I get into impact, I've often swung it a little bit on the shorter side. I get into impact and the handle drags towards the target. And we've seen it a lot in the past where you kind of have the technique of, let's say, hinge and hold, where golfers will get to hinge and then they'll try and hold. And actually what happens here is by hinging and holding it, we've taken the bounce out of the club, and it makes it very easy to do two things: land it too soon and catch it fat with the leading edge going into the ground, or be scared of that shot and actually hold the club in the air for a little bit longer by driving the hands forward, and that's where the thin shot comes in. So where this might be a type of shot, a type of chip, it certainly is. There's many different types of shots you can play. It's not I don't think, from watching a lot of amateur golfers and even professional, like PGA professionals like myself, it's not a consistent way of chipping. So what we're going to be talking about is using the butt end of the golf club and being able to relate that back to your body. Because when you set up, butt of the club points towards your stomach, okay? Now, if you use your body correctly and you rotate away, the butt of the club is still kind of got that relationship with your stomach on the way back. So your shoulders and your stomach and the club are all working together. They're staying as one unit. There's a little bit of movement in the wrists, but that's only because the golf club is swinging on an arc. So this club head is staying neutral to the arc. We're not swinging in straight lines, okay? So the golf club has to move with the arc, and that's one of the key things for this, because when you go back to any other method where you see players hinging and holding, that club head now is not working with the arc, it's working in a straight line. So where you've hinged it on the way back and followed the arc, you haven't followed the arc back to the golf ball. And that's where a lot of inconsistencies lie. So a key point within the technique of a short game shot is the length of backswing. Like I say, if we get a little bit too short, then we get a bit panicky and we kind of try and hold it on the way through, and that becomes a bit of a disaster. So just encouraging yourself to allow the club to work its way a little bit further back in the length of swing, but also what it's doing, it's allowing the golf club to work up that little bit higher. we work it up a touch higher than usual, we're able to compress and hit down on the golf ball. And that's why I wanted to do this video from the rough, because right now I've got a little bit of grass behind the golf ball, and if I get a little bit on the short side and a bit stabby, or a little bit kind of try and hold that angle on the way through, it's going to be very, very easy to catch the middle of the ball. Whereas if I've got a little bit more of a fluid backswing and I get through the golf ball a bit more naturally, then it becomes a lot easier to get the strike. And what I mean by naturally is, if I swing it back to here, I want to feel like I'm still swinging it on the way through to here. And you'll still notice that I've got body rotation. And again, we don't want to have zero body movement, even on these short chip shots. You see a lot of golfers as well, they panic. They really struggle with this sort of distance, and they almost try and play it like a putter. Now that is a type of shot that you can play. However, you wouldn't really want to play that shot if the ball was kind of sat down, like that first one was, sat down a bit more into the rough, because you don't have the depth and the height and the angle of attack in the swing to get through the grass. So you're almost trying to play this like a putting shot, but hoping that the grass doesn't interfere. And you're now reliant on grass. You don't want to worry about the grass. Your technique needs to be the one that gets you through the grass. And I always joke with golfers, I say, well, this clump of metal can get through grass. You just got to set it on the right path. Now, in terms of the release pattern, I've got a terrible lie there. So in terms of release pattern, allow the club to work its way a little bit further back. And what I want to try and do here, we've spoken about the butt of the club already, is as we're rotating through the shot, at impact, the butt of the club is back to my stomach again, okay? I've not allowed it to stay pointing outside the lead side of my body. I've released it back down into the center of my stomach. Now, again, if we go back to setup, it's in the center. If I do the backswing, it's in the center of my stomach. I hit, I've come back to the center of my stomach. So what I'm doing is just maintaining the movement, the start position almost. And again, that's where a lot of golfers, they try and maintain the start position, but you're actually not maintaining it, you're changing it. Remember, the golf swing, as I keep saying, is working on an arc, not a straight line. So what rotates away needs to rotate back through. Now, what I want to try and focus on here is the positioning of the club at impact and post impact. So we're going to get the club back to this central position where the butt of the club's pointing towards the stomach. And as I rotate through and just stop here, I want to get the butt of the club again pointing at my stomach. So two things need to happen. I need to release the golf club correctly, and I need to rotate. If I'm the type of golfer that panics and stays down, stomach's here, golf club's here. Detachment. That's not how I started the swing. I've not maintained anything during the swing in that perspective, okay? I've created new positions in such a short space of time. If you think of it from a logical perspective, it makes zero sense, doesn't it? It makes no sense you want to try and maintain a position, you want to try and have all the best influences on the golf club into the golf ball, but actually what you're doing is the opposite of what you're trying to do. So what I always say, try and get the club head, the butt of the club in the stomach, and very close as well. I don't want to see this over elongated extension. So we're keeping the butt of the club in the stomach, not letting it get too far away from the body, and just stopping it there. Look at that beautiful strike, and it has that little release because I'm coming out of the rough. That was a terrible lie, by the way. And you should have been able to hear it on the audio, how clean the strike was. Look at the finish position. Body's turned, butt of the club pointing back to my stomach. These are very small movements. Not much is really going on. I'm just kind of keeping the golf club rotating on the arc. I'm not panicking, getting the club out to there. Once the club's in that position, all I'm doing is that. That's all the wrists are doing in this golf swing. They're not over hinging it. They're not pulling it on the inside, something I'm going to come back to in a second. They're just allowing the club to work up and downwards, following the arc, and allowing the golf club to work through the impact area, coming out of rough, downhill, plenty of roll, makes the shot so much simpler. Now, I did touch briefly then on swing path. One of the most common things I see is a strong grip, okay? Strong grip in golf is one of the most common things amongst amateurs. And what tends to happen with a strong grip is when you start to hinge, you can't really pick the golf club up very high because of the positioning of your wrist. Like that wrist there doesn't go upwards, okay? So what it does do though, it goes that way, it goes backwards. So if I use my natural wrist position from a poor, strong grip, the club now goes in there. I can assure you folks, that is a disaster. Two reasons why you can use this as the checkpoints I've been using throughout this video. Butt of the club is certainly not pointing at my body and the club head is super low. Look, imagine the path that club now needs to take to get back to that golf ball and then round to my target. It is not going to happen. So I would urge you, even on a short game shot, weaken your grip, okay? Even if it's a completely different grip to how you play every other shot, learn a weak grip for your chipping, okay? This way, you're going to find it so much easier to keep the club more out in front of your body. I would rather see you swing the club in that direction and point the club down towards your thigh and get it outside, because at least then what we do know is that the ball just pops up super high and you're hitting down on the ball and creating height. From this angle here, we're in an absolute disaster territory. I can't stress it enough. Well, I think I've tried, but we are in a disastrous territory. So do not allow the strong grip to pull the club on the inside. It's the two most common things that I see in chipping, and they are, as I've said it, disastrous. Okay, so let's try and make sure we can weaken the grip for a chipping shot, a short game shot, a pitch shot, so you're able to control the path better, maintain the bounce, but also work the club in the correct way. So within this video, we've spoken about wrist hinge, we've spoken about path, we've spoken about release, and they are the most important areas of this particular shot. There's not a massive amount of movement. I remember I'm swinging on an arc, I'm swinging on a circle. So all I'm doing is maintaining the circle motion with my whole body. Okay, we're not maintaining it on the way back and then holding it on the way through. We're maintaining the movement all the way through the shot, and that is absolutely vital. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, please hit the like, hit the subscribe. Loads more to come. Monday and Wednesdays golf tips. Jump on the community page. Let me know what tips you need, what you want to see, and I'll bring them to you.